That night, Serena sat alone in her quiet apartment, with only the low murmur of the TV keeping her company. 2 years had passed since her beloved husband had gone, yet the emptiness had never once eased. Then suddenly a familiar voice echoed from the kitchen, the voice of Cassian, the man who was gone. She trembled as she stepped toward it, and what she saw changed her life forever. Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. That night, Serena's small apartment was bathed in the faint blue glow of the old television. The muffled sound of the ongoing program wasn't enough to hold her attention, yet it played steadily, filling the terrifying void of silence. Serena curled up on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket as if it were armor against the darkness and the loneliness that surrounded her. She had grown used to leaving the TV on all day and all night, not because she cared about what was playing, but because she needed some kind of sound to feel she wasn't completely alone. 2 years had passed since Cassian, her husband, her companion, the most vital piece of her life, had been taken in a car accident, and Serena still hadn't learned how to face silence. To her, silence wasn't peace. It was a void that reminded her of a loss nothing could fill. At the publishing house, her co-workers often saw her laughing, telling witty stories, and cracking jokes to lighten the mood in the office. She had never wanted anyone to glimpse her weakness. Other people already carry enough sadness. They don't need mine too, Serena often told herself. But when the apartment door closed behind her, when no one was there to witness, that mask fell away. Here it was, just her, the TV, and a heart that still hadn't healed. She leaned back slightly, her gaze drifting unconsciously to the corner of the room, where their wedding photo still stood neatly on a wooden shelf. In the picture, Cassian's smile was radiant, his eyes bright like summer sunlight. He had been a biology teacher, endlessly fascinated with birds and plants. Serena remembered clearly how patiently he had taught her to distinguish between a nightingale and a lark, or how he had explained the long migrations of wild birds across continents. The longing pulled her back to the first morning they had met. Serena had been reading under a tree in the park when a sparrow suddenly landed on her page. She froze, holding her breath, while Cassian, camera in hand, whispered, "Don't move, let me take it." The bird flew off before he could press the shutter, but that fleeting moment had linked two strangers. Later, Cassian had given her a small silver necklace with a bird-shaped pendant, saying, "So you'll always remember birds bring signs of freedom and new beginnings. And who knows, maybe they even carry messages from far beyond." Birds had become their private symbol of love. Whenever they faced an important decision, choosing an apartment, planning a trip, even the day Cassian proposed, they waited for a bird to appear as a sign. And strangely enough, the birds had never failed them. Now Cassian was gone, and the birds seemed to have vanished from Serena's life as well. She still wore the necklace every day as a way of keeping him close. Her fingers brushed over the pendant, feeling the chill of the metal. It made her shiver, yet it was the only thing keeping her faith from breaking completely. The apartment around her was too quiet. On the kitchen table sat a plate of cold food, a hastily prepared salad that barely passed as dinner. There was no one sitting across from her anymore. No Cassian teasing her about eating too slowly. No eyes lighting up as he shared a new discovery about birds. The empty chair across the table suddenly felt like a black void consuming the whole room. She lifted a spoon to her mouth, chewing slowly. The food was tasteless, or rather, she hadn't truly tasted a meal in a long time. Without someone to share it with, eating had become nothing more than a habit for survival. Serena rested her chin on her hand, her eyes blurring with tears. Outside, the distant sound of car horns drifted in, and a breeze stirred the curtains. But inside Serena's heart, there was only hollowness. She knew she was alive, yet she hadn't truly lived since the day Cassian died. She took a deep breath, leaned her head back against the couch, and whispered to herself as if for comfort, "I'll be okay, won't I?" But the question fell into the emptiness, unanswered. Serena let out a faint laugh, a smile both tender and tinged with sorrow. Out in the world, she could make everyone believe she had moved on. But in this apartment, when night fell, the truth could not be hidden. In that moment, Serena wished a bird would suddenly appear, just like before, to tell her she was still on the right path. But the windows were shut, and only the moonlight stretched silently across the floor. Serena closed her eyes. A single tear slipped onto the pillow. Her heart still ached, but deep inside, a fragile seed of hope trembled that perhaps one day the song of a bird would return to her life, leading her out of these silent nights. The next morning, Serena stepped onto the balcony with a hot cup of coffee in her hand. The spring sky was clear, sunlight spilling gently over the busy street below. For many, it was the start of a fresh new day. But for Serena, this moment felt like a mirror reflecting the emptiness in her heart. Her fingers brushed the small bird-shaped pendant resting against her chest. It was cool to the touch, yet it was the only thing that made her feel warm inside. For 2 years, Serena had never once taken it off, not even when bathing or sleeping. Many had advised her to put it away, to lighten her heart. But Serena knew that removing it would feel like severing the fragile thread that still connected her to Cassian, and that was something she couldn't do. Once again, her memory pulled her back to that very first morning in the park. That day, Serena had been sitting alone beneath the branches of an old oak tree, a novel open in her hands. Golden sunlight shimmered through the leaves, and a soft breeze swept strands of her hair across her face. Suddenly, a small sparrow fluttered down and landed right on her page. Serena froze, holding her breath, her wide eyes filled with wonder. A quiet voice came from behind her. "Don't move. Let me take a picture." She turned her head slightly. It was a young man with a large camera slung over his shoulder. His face glowed in the sunlight, his dark eyes sparkling with excitement. But before he could press the shutter, the sparrow spread its wings and flew away. Serena laughed while the young man shrugged, a gentle smile curving on his lips. "I was a second too late. What a pity." "It's fine. I think in memory it'll feel even more vivid than in a photograph," Serena replied, her voice still trembling from the moment. That small conversation lasted longer than she expected. They talked about books, about birds, about the simple joy of spending a morning in the park. When it was time to part, the young man only said, "I'm Cassian. I hope I'll see you here again." And they truly did meet again a second time, then a third, and eventually their encounters became intentional. On the fourth meeting, Cassian handed Serena a small box. Inside lay a silver necklace with a delicate bird pendant, simple yet exquisite. "So you'll remember that first morning," Cassian said, his eyes soft with tenderness. "And because birds are symbols of freedom, of new beginnings. The ancients even believed they were messengers between heaven and earth, carrying words from faraway places. Who knows, maybe one day they'll bring us the signs we need." Serena had laughed then. "You really are a dreamer." But from that day on, the necklace never left her neck. Throughout their 10 years together, birds became the private language of their love. Whenever they had to make an important decision, buying an apartment, planning a long trip, even on the day Cassian proposed, they always waited for a bird to appear as a sign. Serena remembered the proposal as if it were yesterday. Cassian had knelt beneath the very tree where they first met. Just then, a nightingale burst into song. Cassian smiled, took her hand and said, "See? Even the birds agree with me." That memory was as sweet as it was painful. Now there was only Serena and the necklace. On sleepless nights, she would touch it, close her eyes and try to imagine Cassian somewhere, smiling at her. To others, it might look like clinging, an old habit she couldn't let go of. But to Serena, it was the only way to keep going. She whispered softly as if to herself, "Birds are love. They are guidance. Cassian, you're still out there somewhere, aren't you? You'll let me know when it's time to move on." A breeze drifted through, stirring the curtains. Serena lifted her eyes as though hoping for a bird to appear. But the sky was empty, with only slow-moving clouds above. Her heart tightened. Yet instead of tears, Serena allowed herself a gentle smile, one that carried both tenderness and sorrow. She knew she was still waiting for a sign, a message from a love long past, so that one day she would be brave enough to welcome something new. Mornings at the publishing house usually began with familiar sounds: the hum of the printer, the clacking of keyboards, and the low murmur of editors chatting. Serena walked in with her canvas tote slung across her shoulder, her gentle smile always ready, almost like part of her outfit. To anyone who saw her, she looked like a cheerful, lively woman without a care in the world. "Good morning, Serena. Brought pastries for the office again today?" a colleague teased. She laughed, lifting the small pastry box she'd picked up on her way in. If there aren't any pastries, I doubt anyone could survive those endless manuscripts. Laughter rippled through the room, and for a moment, Serena felt a little lighter. These small moments were her way of holding on to the part of herself that always wanted to bring comfort to others. At that morning's meeting, the editor-in-chief, Mrs. Eleonora, handed Serena a folder. Serena, you'll be in charge of the new children's book project. We've just partnered with a very talented illustrator. You'll work directly with him to make sure the words and images align. Serena nodded, taking the folder. On the cover page, the illustrator's name was clearly written. Gabriel Alvarez. That afternoon, Serena stepped into a small conference room to meet her new collaborator. The door opened, and she saw a tall man with broad shoulders, slightly messy hair, and thick-rimmed glasses. He was bent over, arranging sketches with such focus that he didn't notice her standing there. "Excuse me, are you Gabriel?" Serena asked. Gabriel looked up. Behind the glasses were warm brown eyes, and a gentle smile slowly spread across his face. "Yes, that's me. And you must be Serena, the lead editor?" "That's right. It's a pleasure to work with you." They shook hands. His hand was large and firm, yet his grip was steady and calm. The sensation made Serena unconsciously let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. They began discussing the project. The book was an illustrated children's guide to constellations. Serena explained the publisher's vision. The images needed to be lively, but still scientifically accurate. Gabriel listened intently, jotting down notes here and there. He didn't interrupt or rush to speak. He waited until Serena finished before offering his thoughts. "I think we could add warmer tones to the night sky, so it feels more approachable for children." "What do you think?" Serena smiled. "That's exactly what I was hoping for." "It's good to see you grasp the concept so quickly." He chuckled softly. "Maybe because I prefer listening over debating. The best ideas usually come from listening closely." His words gave Serena pause. It had been so long since she'd heard someone speak in such a calm, thoughtful way. In her work, most people were quick to assert themselves, eager to prove their brilliance. But Gabriel was different. He truly listened. The following sessions became a new rhythm in Serena's days. At first, she told herself it was just work. But soon, every time she entered the meeting room and saw Gabriel already waiting with his sketches, she felt a quiet sense of reassurance. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were concise and on point. And sometimes his silence wasn't awkward at all. It created a kind of ease, as though Serena could finally breathe a little deeper. One evening, as they reviewed the final drafts together, the room was lit only by the warm glow of a desk lamp. Serena sighed, weary. Authors really do have boundless imaginations, writing about the entire universe and still expecting children to understand it all. Gabriel laughed. But children actually have imaginations that surpass adults. Maybe we just need to trust that. His remark made Serena laugh too. Her laughter rang out in the quiet space, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't a forced laugh to mask her sadness, it was real. Day by day, Serena realized how comforting Gabriel's presence was. He never pried into her private life, never poked at the voids she wasn't ready to reveal. He simply listened, and sometimes, that silence was the greatest comfort of all. One afternoon, they grabbed a quick lunch at the cafe near the office. Serena shared a funny story about a coworker spilling coffee on a manuscript. Gabriel chuckled, his smile slow and kind. "You have such a charming way of telling stories. I think if you wrote a memoir, it would be a bestseller." Serena shook her head, playfully pouting. "If I ever wrote one, it'd just be full of nonsense. No one would read it." "I would," Gabriel replied instantly, his tone steady but warm. The words caught Serena off guard. For a moment, her heart stirred a feeling she thought she had lost long ago. That evening at home, Serena switched on the TV, as was her habit. But this time, something different lingered inside her, a quiet warmth. Gabriel's gentle smile behind those thick-rimmed glasses hovered in her thoughts. Her fingers brushed the bird-shaped pendant as she whispered, "Cassian, I don't know what this is, but maybe you'd want me to smile again, wouldn't you?" Night fell. The sorrow hadn't vanished, but deep down, Serena realized something. Perhaps the sign she had been waiting for from the birds was slowly taking form in the shape of a new colleague with a kind smile. That afternoon, the editorial office was busier than usual. Serena sat at her desk, buried in a stack of manuscripts. She was so absorbed in striking through lines with her red pen that she didn't notice Gabriel standing beside her, a lunchbox in his hand. "Are you planning to eat lunch right on top of those papers?" he asked, his tone half teasing, half serious. Serena looked up, a little flustered. "I just wanted to save some time. Bad habit, I know." "Then, how about we step outside for a bit? I know a little place nearby, much quieter than this room full of printers." Serena hesitated, but the warmth in his eyes and the gentle smile behind his thick-rimmed glasses made it hard to say no. The place Gabriel brought her to was tucked away in a narrow alley. Nothing fancy, just a few wooden tables and chairs, with the aroma of hot soup wafting in the air. Serena chuckled when he chose the seat by the window. "You really are the type who loves simplicity." "That's right. I don't do well with noisy places. All I need is a quiet corner." Over their meal, Gabriel spoke about his family. His parents and siblings still lived in another state. Ever since he chose to pursue art, the distance between them hadn't only been geography, it was also the unspoken disagreements that came with his decision. "I've never regretted the choice, but sometimes that distance makes me feel like an outsider." Serena fell silent. His words struck a deep chord within her. She knew that feeling well, the ache of losing a familiar anchor, of walking into a room and realizing there was no one left to share joy or sorrow with. She nodded, giving a small smile. "You're not the only one. I know what loneliness feels like too." Gabriel didn't press further. He simply nodded as if understanding without needing an explanation. And that, more than anything, made Serena feel safe and lighter. Later that day after work, Gabriel stopped by Serena's desk. "If you're not in a rush to head home, there's a cafe I think you'd like. They serve a really fragrant jasmine tea." Serena was caught off guard. It had been so long since she'd accepted an invitation like this, outside of work-related meetings. Her heart skipped a beat before her reason quickly chimed in. "It's just coffee after work. Nothing more." They sat in a small cafe with soft golden lights and faint jazz playing in the background. Serena found herself watching Gabriel's hands as he stirred his tea. His hands were large and steady, yet every movement was careful and unhurried. "Do you ever regret leaving your family?" she asked. Gabriel thought for a moment before shaking his head. "I think every sadness has its own value. If I hadn't experienced it, I'd never have learned how to truly listen to what others need." Serena stayed quiet, watching the reflection of the light in his eyes. She realized she hadn't spoken this freely in a long time. Conversations with Gabriel weren't heavy, weren't tinged with pity, and were never forced. They were simply two people sitting together, sharing the empty spaces in their hearts. By the time they left, the sky had deepened into a dusky violet. Walking side by side, Serena listened to the sound of their footsteps, blending together on the quiet street. A peaceful warmth spread in her chest, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from her heart. But then, in that moment, a sharp pang pricked her, an old guilt resurfacing. "What am I doing?" Laughing, feeling at ease next to another man. "Am I betraying Cassian?" Her hand instinctively reached for the bird-shaped pendant, clutching it as though to hold on to the memory. Cassian's smiling face rose in her mind, his eyes tender, yet tinged with reproach. Serena bit her lip, her heart aching. Gabriel turned to her, concern in his gaze. "Are you all right?" Serena quickly forced a smile, trying to hide the storm inside her. "Yes, just a little tired. I'm fine." Gabriel didn't ask further. He only slowed his steps to walk closer by her side. That simple restraint made Serena's heart stir even more. He didn't push, didn't demand. He simply was there. And that presence was enough to make her feel she wasn't completely alone anymore. That night, Serena left the TV on as always. A documentary about ancient cities was playing, its steady narration like a thin blanket draped over the empty spaces in her apartment. The faint blue glow of the screen brushed against the walls, swept across picture frames, glided over the vase of white daisies on the shelf, and scattered into flickering dots in the corner of the room. Serena pulled the blanket up to her chest, trying to find a comfortable position on the sofa. She was tired, but didn't bother turning the TV off. By now, the habit had become a survival ritual, As long as there was sound, she knew she wasn't completely alone. She closed her eyes, letting the soft background music carry her across the line between wakefulness and sleep. And then snap. Without warning, the screen went dark. The sound vanished. The apartment plunged into silence, dense and cold as a slab of ice. Serena's eyes flew open, her heart pounding. She glanced at the remote lying crookedly by the pillow. Her brows furrowed. Was it a power outage? But outside the window, the neon sign across the street still glowed red. The neighbor's windows still burned a warm gold. That's when she heard it so faint, like a breath. Serena. The sound hadn't come from the TV. It drifted through the air, soft as silk, heavy as stone, sinking into her chest. Serena bolted upright, the blanket slipping off her shoulders. Every nerve in her body tightened all at once. That voice, unmistakable. Serena. Clearer this time, as if gliding down the hallway, as if brushing against her skin. It was Cassian's voice, low, warm, carrying that tender smile like late sunlight. Serena froze at the edge of the rug, her legs trembling as though they no longer belonged to her. She wanted to believe she was dreaming, that it was a trick of memory, but the sensation was too real. The apartment was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Drawing in a breath, she decided to move. Each step on the wooden floor echoed with a hollow thud, stretched into eternity in the stillness of the night. Moonlight spilled across the hallway, thin silver streaks slicing the apartment into interlaced shadows and light. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and daisies, everything as familiar as always, except for the wild rhythm in her chest. Passing the photo shelf, the moon's glow fell squarely on the wedding portrait, Cassian's radiant smile, his dark eyes shining. Serena's fingers brushed the frame, her whisper fragile as though it might shatter something delicate. Cassian, is it you? A light breeze drifted through, or was it only her imagination? She couldn't be sure. But then the voice came a third time, tender as a lullaby. Serena? It came from the kitchen. Serena swallowed hard. Her hand instinctively gripped the bird-shaped pendant against her chest. The cool silver pressed to her skin, a tiny spark in the chaos. She quickened her pace. At the kitchen doorway, she stopped, her palms slick with sweat. Her finger flicked the switch. Click. The yellow light swept over the spotless counter, the cup she'd left by the sink, and the hand towel hanging neatly. No one was there, but something was different. The window above the sink was ajar, a thin curtain billowing gently like a chest rising and falling. And on the sill, a nightingale perched. It tilted its head at Serena. Its beady black eyes glistened, reflecting shards of broken moonlight. Its feathers were soft, streaked with pale brown along its tiny wings. A creature so ordinary in the day, but in this moment, its presence made the kitchen feel sacred. Serena held her breath. She feared even the smallest movement might drive it away. Feared that in a blink, the fragile thread tying her to Cassian would snap. Her voice trembled like a leaf. Did he send you to me? The nightingale didn't answer, of course not. It simply stood there, frozen in a silence that stretched until time itself seemed to pause. Then suddenly yet gently, it sang. A brief cascade of notes, pure as poured silver, soft as silk, rising and fading against the brick walls. The counter, Serena's trembling hands. Just that delicate as a strand of hair, but enough to fill the kitchen. A tear slipped down Serena's cheek, then another. She didn't fight it. Her body seemed to know what to do, shoulders loosening, chest opening, breath slowing deep. The song touched the place she had avoided for 2 years. She let it flow through her, like spring water over dry palms. Cassian, she whispered, barely audible. I'm here. The nightingale blinked, tilted its head again, a small motion that felt like a nod. Then it spread its thin wings. For one instant, they cut across the moonlight, sketching a shimmering shadow on the wall. And then it was gone, slipping into the night breeze, leaving the window shivering in its wake. The only sound left was the steady tick, tick of the wall clock, the rhythm she once feared, now through some quiet mystery, softened and kind. Serena stepped forward to close the window gently. She lingered, palms resting on the sill, staring down at the alley bathed in honey-yellow streetlight. The night was the same, the city unchanged, yet something inside her had shifted. Not a loud explosion, just a quiet turn, like an old hinge creaking open to let in a sliver of light. She returned to the living room. The TV screen was still black, reflecting her small figure in the doorway. Serena didn't turn it back on. She still feared silence, yes. But this silence wasn't like the nights before. It wasn't a black hole swallowing her whole, but a still lake rippling where a bird had touched its surface. She sat back on the sofa, her fingers brushing the pendant. The silver bird rested in her palm, cold as morning water. Closing her eyes, she whispered, "I understand now. Birds are signs. They are in love. They are guidance." Tears welled again, but this time they fell like spring rain, warm, gentle, grateful. She didn't need to explain with reason, she only needed to trust the feeling spreading from the deepest part of herself. Cassian wasn't coming back, and she knew it. But love hadn't vanished. It had changed form into memory, into longing, into the nightingale perched on her sill tonight. Serena pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Without the TV, she could hear the city breathing faintly in the distance, like a lullaby stitched into the night sky. Images overlapped in her mind. Golden sunlight in the park, the first meeting, the camera that never caught the shot, the necklace in a small box. His words, "When you see a bird, trust you're on the right path." She smiled through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered to the wedding photo, to the sky, to her own heart. "I'll try." Then she turned off the kitchen light and walked down the moonlit hallway. Each step felt lighter, each shadow less menacing. Before entering her room, she paused to draw the living room curtain open, just a crack. Perhaps, just perhaps, when morning sun perched on the rooftops opposite, a bird might pass by. She lay down on the bed without turning on the TV. The window stayed open, letting the night air carry in scents of leaves, damp stone, and a city breathing slowly. Serena placed her hand over the pendant, feeling her heartbeat steady. On the edge of sleep, she thought she heard faint, far away a nightingale's refrain, delicate as thread, enduring as string. "You're not alone. Keep walking. We always find our way home." In that gentle darkness, a smile bloomed on Serena's lips like a small daisy. For the first time in a very long time, she slept soundly not because noise filled the void, but because her heart had been touched. Somewhere close, a fragile door had opened, and out there, the sky was still wide enough for another love to learn to fly. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. That night, Serena slept a rare, deep sleep. The window remained ajar as it had the evening before. The breeze moved through the curtains, carrying the damp scent of leaves and the faint rustle of a city breathing. In that gentle quiet, a dream came to her, soft as silk, bright as dawn. She found herself standing in the familiar park. The great oak spread its canopy like a vast green roof. Sunlight spilled in golden fragments across the grass, where dry leaves crumbled under her shoes. Everything was startlingly vivid. The smell of earth after a night's rain, the bubbling sound of the fountain in the distance, a white butterfly drifting near a flower bed. Serena looked down at her hand. The old book that had accompanied her through dozens of mornings was there. The bird-shaped pendant rested against her chest, warmer than usual, as though touched by gentle sunlight. And Cassian was there. He sat on the wooden bench beneath the oak, the very bench from their first meeting. Cassian looked at her, his dark eyes shining, a smile on his face as always. The light caught his hair, sketching a faint halo around his temples. Serena wanted to run to him, but her feet faltered, held back by a fragile fear that if she moved too quickly, everything would dissolve like mist. "Cassian!" Her voice slipped out, soft as breath. Cassian rose, took a step forward, then stopped close enough for their gazes to meet fully. He held out his hand. Serena stepped forward, placing her hand in his. Warm, steady, so real that her heart wept even before her eyes had time to. "You came," he said, his voice light as a morning greeting. "I thought I had forgotten how to dream of you." Serena replied, her lips trembling. Last night, I heard your voice, and then a nightingale. Cassian smiled as if he already knew. He didn't explain. The silence between them was fuller than words. They walked along the leaf-strewn path, where sunlight filtered through branches into neat squares on the grass. Serena listened to the sounds of her steps on the ground, the wind moving through the leaves and the chatter of birds nearby. Every sound carried the face of a memory. I was afraid of silence, she said, watching a sparrow land on a nearby stone. I kept the TV on every night like a lantern, afraid the darkness would swallow you. Silence doesn't take anything away, Cassian answered, his voice warm as the 9 o'clock sun. It only returns the sound of your own heart. Serena, you need to allow yourself to live on. She stopped. The words live on fell into her like a pebble into still water, rippling outward. Serena swallowed, her hand reaching instinctively for the bird pendant. But what if I forget you? She asked, her voice trembling with fear and guilt. What if what was once so clear, the smell of your shirt, the sound of your laugh, the way you said my name fades away? Cassian shook his head, his gaze softened, deep as a sky after rain. Some things don't need memory, he said. They're carved in the deepest place, where you touch them without words. Serena, whenever you see a bird, remember I still want you to be happy. A breeze passed, carrying a faint trill. The sparrow lifted from the stone, arcing between them before disappearing into the trees. Serena looked up, eyes wet. She turned to Cassian. I've been waiting for a sign, she whispered, confessing something private. But I was afraid to believe. Belief doesn't take great courage, Cassian smiled. Only half a breath. They walked further until the path split in two. One trail, narrow and shaded, wound up the hill through thick trees. The other was wide, sunlit, and led toward an open clearing where the sky stretched out broad. Cassian stopped, glancing at both paths, then at her. This is my road, he said, pointing to the shaded hill, and that is yours. Can't we walk together a little longer? Serena asked, her smile fragile as glass. We've already walked a long way together, Cassian said, and that path won't disappear. It's in you and your laughter, in the way you look at the sky, in the things you dare to do, because you believe in the smallest signs, like a bird's wing. Serena no longer tried to be strong. She let sorrow and love flow through her at once, neither pushing them away nor clinging. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. His embrace was still her refuge, so familiar she could smell the sun and paper on his shirt, just like the days he graded assignments by the window. Thank you, she whispered into his shoulder, for loving me and for still knowing how to find me in dreams. Cassian drew back just enough to look into her eyes. He placed his palm over the bird pendant on her chest, his warm fingers against the cool metal, bridging an invisible current between past and present. Then he bent down and kissed her forehead light as a bird touching the surface of a lake. Go, Serena, he said, his voice so gentle even the grass seemed to bow to hear it. The sky is wide enough for you to fly once more. Serena wanted to tell him that she loved him, that she would never let him fall into oblivion, that if the winds turned, she would still stand with the smallest signs. But her throat closed, everything condensed into a single nod. Cassian stepped back, then again, before turning toward the shaded hill. He didn't look back, but he raised a hand in farewell, as he used to every morning when they parted at the door. Sunlight cloaked his back. For an instant, Serena saw him merge with the trees, becoming part of that path, peaceful, complete, and receding. When his figure vanished, birdsong rose somewhere nearby, longer and brighter. Serena lingered at the fork, her hand resting on the pendant. Her cheeks were wet, but her chest felt as if a window had opened. Through it, the breeze carried sunlight, leaves, and a simple message. Live on. The scene receded, its colors fading, the park blurred, as though veiled in mist. Serena heard her own heartbeat steady, warm, like footsteps on the sunlit path. She woke as the first rays touched the edge of the curtain. On her pillow, a damp streak. Serena lifted her hand to her cheek. The tears were still fresh. The room was quiet, but it no longer felt consuming. The morning air drifted in through the cracked window, carrying the faint sound of birds outside. Serena sat up. She didn't rush to turn on the TV. Her hand sought the pendant, squeezing it lightly as though greeting an old friend. A thin smile spread across her face, not radiant, but steady, like sunlight breaking through a thin veil of clouds. "I will live on," she said to the room, to the sky, and to the man who had taught her to believe in small things. "And every time I see a bird, I'll remember you want me to be happy." At the windowsill, a brown flicker passed by and disappeared. Maybe a sparrow, maybe only a shifting shadow. Serena didn't try to tell the difference. She stood and walked toward the kitchen. The vase of daisies needed fresh water. Breakfast could be toast and a cup of jasmine tea. Small, ordinary things, but this morning, they glowed as if touched by new light. Her heart felt lighter, not because the sorrow was gone, but because she had found a place to set it down. And somewhere deep within, where the dream had just lingered, Serena heard Cassian's voice again, distant yet close. "The sky is wide enough, Serena. Fly." That morning, Serena opened her eyes before the alarm rang. Early sunlight slipped through the edge of the curtain, thin as a golden scarf wrapped around the window frame. The TV was silent, the room so quiet she could hear the faint chirping of birds outside, the whir of a bicycle passing by, and even the steady rhythm of her own breathing. Strangely, the quiet no longer felt like falling into a bottomless pit. It felt like the surface of a lake just stilled, clear enough to see the bottom. Serena stepped out of bed, shivering with pleasure at the cool touch of the wooden floor beneath her feet. She pulled the curtain wide, opened the window, and let the morning breeze rush in, carrying the damp scent of leaves and the faint aroma of coffee from the corner cafe. Her hand automatically reached toward the remote but stopped. Today, she would try something different. She made a simple breakfast, a slice of toast with butter and orange marmalade, and a pot of jasmine tea. As the butter melted into the bread, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she had actually savored a peaceful breakfast. Carrying the tray out to the small balcony where 2 pots of lavender she had planted the season before now sprouted narrow purple buds with a gentle fragrance, she sat down. The city was just waking beneath her. The newspaper vendor pushed his cart through streaks of sunlight. A schoolgirl with a high ponytail clutched her backpack. A golden-haired dog led its owner along the sidewalk, nose twitching, tail wagging. Serena settled into the wicker chair, set the tray on the round iron table, and blew across her teacup, letting the steam brush her face. Warmth caressed her skin, and the jasmine scent was so soothing that she closed her eyes. No TV, no need. Silence, it turned out, wasn't an enemy. It was more like an old friend who had always known her well, patiently waiting for her return after years of running. Serena bit into the toast. The butter and marmalade blended the sweet, the tart, the crispness. "Breakfast has flavor," she whispered to herself with a small laugh. For 2 years, how many meals had she eaten without truly tasting? A small shadow darted across the wall. Serena looked up. A brown sparrow perched on the wire stretched across the street, tilting its head with that constant curiosity of little birds. Warmth rose in her chest, the gaze from last night's dream brushing her again. "Whenever you see a bird, remember I still want you to be happy." Cassian's words in the dream, soft as leaves, had become an invisible thread woven into this morning. She lingered longer than planned, doing nothing grand, just breathing, sipping tea, watching the street. Ordinary things, but seen with steady eyes, they suddenly seemed impossibly beautiful. Serena smiled wryly at herself. Maybe she was learning how to live all over again, starting with the simplest lessons: eat, breathe, watch, and smile. At the publishing house, the busyness was the same: the printers, the scrape of chairs, voices calling across rows of desks. Serena set her bag down just as she noticed Gabriel by the window, holding a stack of sketches, squinting at the sunlight. He turned at the exact moment she glanced his way. That gentle smile appeared behind his thick-rimmed glasses, not rushed, not showy. "Good morning," he said, his voice like a freshly poured cup of tea. "You look brighter today." Serena laughed, touching her cheek lightly. "Maybe because I slept well, and I had breakfast outside without the TV." Gabriel raised his brows slightly. "That's a good ritual." In silence, people hear interesting things. "Like what?" "Like themselves," he smiled. "And sometimes birds." They carried their materials into the small conference room. While she spread the manuscript pages out, Gabriel pulled a slim photo book from his bag, its cover depicting a blue sky with a small black bird in the corner. I reread this last night, he said, sliding it across to her. It's written for children, but when adults read it, it feels softer somehow. Serena traced her fingers over the textured cover. Gabriel sat across from her, flipping to a page marked with a sticky note. Did you know, his voice was steady, low, migratory birds can travel thousands of miles across oceans and still return to the exact place they left? They say birds have an inner compass. They sense the Earth's magnetic field, follow the sun, the moon, the stars, the scent of the wind, even the shape of coastlines. He looked up, eyes warm as amber in sunlight. In other words, no matter how far they wander, they always know the way home. Serena froze. His words sank into her, colliding with the glimmer that had opened in last night's dream. The sky is wide enough. Fly. And whenever you see a bird, her heart trembled, like a string plucked just right. Why are you saying this today? She asked, half teasing, half serious. The timing is uncanny. Because this morning I was standing at the window when I saw a flock sweep across the rooftops, Gabriel answered, and I thought, how lucky to have creatures that always know their way, even when the sky is wide and the winds shift. Serena laughed softly, but her eyes stung with sudden heat. She leaned back, looking at him through the lenses, and realized something. The distance between them had shifted, not vanished, but narrowed into warmth. This coincidence, gentle quiet, was like someone slipping a tiny key into her hand. Whether to turn it was up to her. Do you believe in signs? She asked. Gabriel thought for a moment. I believe in what happens when people listen long enough. He shrugged. If you want to call that a sign, I won't argue. They bent over their work. On the sketches, Gabriel added small bursts of light to the night sky, softening the distance of the constellations. Serena polished the sentences, swapping grand words for gentler ones. Their rhythm was uncanny. He opened space with color. She filled it with words. Two lines running parallel, never crossing, but leading to the same warm picture. Midway through, Eleonora popped in, praised their progress, then left. When the door closed, the room returned to the hush of papers and pens. Serena suddenly heard her heart beat, not from fear, but because it was keeping time to a new melody. Not erasing the old song, only continuing it. Last night, she said quietly, I dreamed of the park. Gabriel didn't press. He only looked at her, waiting. In the dream, there were two paths, one for the man I loved, who has gone, and one for me. I think this morning I took the first steps on mine. She paused, her mouth dry. When you spoke about migratory birds, I felt calm. Gabriel nodded as though it were the most natural thing. Then that's good, he smiled. We're all learning our way home in our own ways, Serena. Her name slipped from his lips without hurting her heart. Instead, it brushed softly against her. Serena exhaled long, deep, feeling her lungs fill with new air. That evening, Serena left the building with the manuscript in hand. Overhead, the sunset poured orange across the rooftops. A flock of small birds suddenly cut through the sky, tiny dots forming an arrow before scattering, playing with the wind. Serena looked up, her hand instinctively rising to her pendant. She didn't say a word. She only smiled. Not the forced smile of effort, but one that came from a door newly opened inside. For the first time in 2 years, the silence around her wasn't frightening. It was a soft backdrop for birdsong to cross, for her footsteps to echo, for tomorrow to land. That night at home, she still turned on the TV, a habit that would take time to change. But when the voices began, she lowered the volume until it was barely a whisper. She opened the window, poured herself tea, and sat still. Amid the faint murmur from the screen, she heard her heartbeat, the breeze, and the delicate echo of the morning, sparrows calling to each other from the wire. Serena closed her eyes and whispered, a small promise to the sky, take it slow. I'm learning my way home. That afternoon, the last rays of sunlight spilled across the glass windows of the publishing house, painting the long hallway gold. Serena gathered the manuscript she had just finished editing, closed her laptop, and prepared to head home as usual. But as she stood, Gabriel appeared in the doorway, coat in hand, that familiar, gentle smile flickering behind his thick-rimmed glasses. Serena, he called. his voice warm as a cup of afternoon tea. "Tonight, would you like to have dinner with me? Not to talk about work, just a real meal." Such a simple question, yet Serena's heart jolted with a forceful beat. A storm of emotions crashed together inside her. Part of her trembled, ready to say no immediately because of Cassian. His name still lingered in every corner of her apartment, in every fold of memory. But another part of her, newer, braver, whispered that perhaps it was time to take the first steps onto the path Cassian had shown her in that dream. Serena drew a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "Are you sure? I don't want to complicate work." Gabriel shook his head lightly. "This has nothing to do with work. I just want to know what you enjoy, apart from stacks of manuscripts." There was no pressure in his eyes, only patient sincerity. Serena felt her heart soften. After a few moments of hesitation, she nodded. "All right." The restaurant Gabriel chose was tucked on a quiet street, its glass doors glowing warmly beneath cascades of bougainvillea. Inside, the lights were soft, the strum of an acoustic guitar filling the air with warmth. Not a fancy place, but the kind where conversation rose naturally, like breath. Serena sat across from Gabriel, accepting the menu from the waiter. She laughed softly when she saw him order the simplest dish, pumpkin soup. "You're not the type to try complicated food, are you?" "I like things clear," Gabriel replied with a faint smile. "Sometimes simplicity lasts the longest." They ordered white wine as well. In the amber glow, steam rose from Serena's plate of pasta, mingling with the fragrance of basil and cheese. She took a sip of wine, the gentle tang spread across her tongue, and for the first time in 2 years, her taste buds felt truly awake. Their conversation flowed easily. They talked about childhood books, about how Gabriel once painted stars on his bedroom ceiling to ease the loneliness of being far from home. Serena shared how she and Cassian once camped overnight in a park just to wait for sparrows at dawn. Her voice faltered when she spoke Cassian's name, but Gabriel didn't flinch, didn't rush to change the subject. He only nodded, his eyes warm as if to say, "I hear you, and I respect that." Serena's throat eased. No one demanded she forget. No one forced her to bury it. Gabriel simply sat there, patient and present, and that was enough to make her feel safe, like a soft awning in a long storm. Dinner ended, and they stepped out onto the cobblestone street. Night had deepened, the lamps casting golden pools of light. A breeze swept past, carrying the sweet scent of pastries from a nearby shop. Serena tugged her scarf closer, her breath forming thin white clouds. Gabriel walked beside her, quiet. Only their footsteps echoed together, steady and unhurried. Near her building, he stopped, turning to her. "Thank you for saying yes tonight," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I know. It's not easy." Serena met his gaze, her heart giving a sharp ache. He was right, it wasn't easy. Inside, guilt twisted. "Cassian, am I betraying you?" The question stung, bringing tears to her eyes. Yet at the same time, another part of her whispered, "He wanted you to be happy. Every bird is a sign. You're only learning how to live again." "Thank you too," she replied softly, smiling, "for being patient." Gabriel's smile deepened, the lamplight reflecting in his eyes like gentle sparks. He simply extended his hand. Serena hesitated for a breath, then placed hers in his. His hand was warm, steady, but his grip so light, as though afraid of hurting her. In that moment, Serena heard a tiny click inside her heart, like an old hinge turning, letting in a narrow strip of light. When her apartment door closed behind her, Serena leaned against it, her hand still tingling with the warmth of his. The TV in the living room clicked on by timer, the host's voice droning steadily. But this time Serena didn't rush to sit. She lifted her gaze to the window, where moonlight poured in like a silver ribbon. Her fingers brushed the bird pendant. Tears slid down her cheeks, but a smile bloomed at the same time. Her longing for Cassian hadn't vanished, but beside it, space had opened for something else, the fragile light of a new beginning. And in her heart, Serena whispered, "My love, I'm learning to fly once more." In the days following that evening, Serena could feel something shifting inside her. At first, it was barely there, like when a long-shut window is cracked open, letting in the faintest streak of sunlight. She still carried her longing for Cassian, still touched the little bird pendant each morning. But alongside that, she found herself smiling more easily, breathing more lightly, daring to let her conversations with Gabriel stretch a little longer. At the publishing house, the busy atmosphere remained the same. Yet for Serena, each work session with Gabriel carried a new rhythm. Their meetings were no longer just dry exchanges about manuscripts. Between the words and the sketches, she began to share more. About the tiny cafe near her apartment, where she went every Sunday morning, about the habit of rereading the same old novel whenever she felt lost, even about the lavender she grew on her balcony, a way to practice giving myself a reason to look forward. Gabriel never interrupted. He listened intently as if every small detail held value. Sometimes he would simply smile and answer with a quiet, "That's beautiful." Or, "Maybe one day, I'd like to see that lavender pot." That gentle kind of listening made Serena feel truly seen, something she hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, when most of the office had already gone home, Serena and Gabriel stayed behind in the small conference room, reviewing the final draft of the children's book. The warm desk lamp poured over the pages, casting their shadows long against the wall. Outside, the city lights glittered faintly, traffic sounds fading until only the stillness of the high floors remained. Serena set the manuscript aside and leaned forward to adjust one of Gabriel's sketches. At that exact moment, his hand reached out too. Their fingers brushed just for an instant, but enough to make her heart leap. Heat pulsed through her skin, spreading a quiet warmth through her body. She pulled her hand back reflexively, cheeks warming with surprise. Gabriel paused only briefly, then gave a small smile and calmly turned the page, as if nothing had happened. No rush, no pressure, just letting the moment rest there, like a seed dropped into soil. Serena sat still, her hand drifting to the bird pendant at her collarbone. Her heartbeat was unsteady but not frantic with fear anymore. Instead, it felt like looking up at the sky after a storm. Vast, overwhelming, yet urging her to step forward. On her way home that night, Serena walked more slowly than usual. The sound of her shoes striking the pavement echoed clearly through the quiet street. She thought of Cassian, of the dream in the park, his farewell kiss on her forehead, and his parting words. "You need to give yourself permission to keep living." Remembering it still tugged at her chest, but the pain wasn't as sharp as before. It had softened, like a wound closing into scar tissue, leaving an ache, but allowing her to breathe without breaking. In that memory, Gabriel's presence wasn't a replacement. It was like a door opening, a door into a room filled with light, where she could carry both the past and the present without having to choose one and abandon the other. Serena lifted her gaze to the night sky. Between the buildings, a small patch of darkness stretched open, and for a moment she glimpsed a lone bird cutting across the glow of the city lights. She smiled, whispering, "Cassian, I think you would understand." That night back home, Serena turned on the TV out of habit, but this time she lowered the volume until it was barely a murmur-soft background sound, no longer drowning out the quiet. She sat on the sofa, hugging a small pillow, letting her thoughts wander. That accidental brush of hands, Gabriel's patient smile, the simple stories she had shared together, they blended into something light, unforced. Serena's heart still remembered Cassian, and she knew it always would. But for the first time in 2 years, that memory no longer felt like chains. It had become a tender keepsake, leaving space for the unsteady, new rhythm her heart now beat for someone else. That weekend afternoon, Serena decided to return to the park she and Cassian had once called their little sanctuary. Sunlight spilled across the grass in long golden streaks. Children ran about, and elderly couples strolled leisurely with their dogs. The early summer breeze carried with it the faint fragrance of jasmine. She chose a wooden bench beneath the old oak tree, the very place where Cassian had once tried to photograph the first sparrow they saw together. Opening the book she'd brought, she found her eyes unable to settle on the words. Memories, long locked away in a dusty box, came rushing out all at once. Across the lawn, a young couple sat close together. The girl leaned her head on the boy's shoulder, both of them giggling at something on the phone screen. Their eyes gleamed with the fresh brightness of happiness, the very happiness Serena once had with Cassian. Her throat tightened. In an instant, the tide of loss surged violently within her. She felt herself thrown back to that fateful afternoon, the ringing of the phone that delivered the news, Cassian's shirt still hanging over a chair. The apartment hollow with an absence that could never be filled. Her vision blurred. She snapped the book shut, tried to draw a deep breath, but a sob broke loose. Hot tears spilled down her cheeks. Abruptly, Serena stood and fled, as though outrunning the memories tearing her apart. She ran and ran through leaf-strewn paths, past a bed of pale lavender, until her legs could carry her no further. Stopping near the lake, she clutched her chest, gasping for air, tears still flowing freely. "Cassian, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I smiled beside someone else. I forgot how to keep you whole in my heart." In that moment, she felt fragile, guilty, as though betraying the memory itself. A hand rested gently on her shoulder. Serena startled and turned. Gabriel stood there. She had no idea how long he'd been nearby, but his eyes held no judgment, only concern, soft and steady. "Serena," he said, his voice low, "you don't have to run. I'm not here to replace anyone." She stayed silent, her lips trembling. Gabriel stepped closer and drew her into a gentle embrace. Not forceful, not tight, just enough to keep her from collapsing. His shoulders were broad, his breathing even, and within that quiet shelter, Serena felt for the first time that she wasn't alone in the storm raging inside her. "I only want to stand beside you, if you'll let me," Gabriel murmured, his words more vow than comfort. "I know you loved Cassian. That love is still here. It doesn't have to disappear for you to keep living. I don't want you to forget. I just want to live forward with you." Those words were like a precise, gentle needle touching the very knot where she'd been bound. Her tears fell harder, but this time they weren't heavy. They flowed like a cleansing stream, washing away the buried guilt. Serena pressed her forehead against his shoulder and closed her eyes. In that darkness, she saw it clearly. New love did not erase the old. It didn't replace or deny, it simply stood alongside, a continuation of her heart's song. Cassian would always be part of her, and Gabriel was beginning to open another part, the present, the future. "I'm afraid," Serena confessed, her voice breaking, "afraid that if I let myself love again, I'll be betraying the past." Gabriel shook his head. "No, Serena. The past is where you once lived fully. That love will always be real, and new love can be just as real. The human heart has no limit for love. It doesn't cut away, it only grows larger." Serena bit her lip, letting his words sink in. Relief spread quietly through her, like a door within her chest creaking open, allowing light to pour in. By the time they left the park, the sky had deepened into the violet hues of dusk. Street lamps flickered on, casting warm pools of amber across the sidewalks. Serena walked slowly, her fingers clutching the bird pendant at her chest. But unlike before, when it felt like a chain binding her to the past, tonight it felt like a bridge connecting two loves, Cassian on one side, Gabriel on the other. Her heart no longer carried only guilt. The ache remained, the tears too, but between them there was room now for hope. Gabriel walked beside her, asking nothing more, pressing nothing further. Simply present, as he had been from the start, and that presence was enough for Serena to feel she wasn't walking alone. That night, Serena turned on the TV out of habit, but her eyes never strayed to the screen. She sat on the sofa, a cup of hot tea in hand, gazing instead at the silver ribbon of moonlight spilling across the windowpane. Inside her, two currents flowed in parallel. One, the tender memory of Cassian, the other, the fragile but growing faith she had in Gabriel. Softly, she whispered her words meant for Cassian. "I haven't forgotten you, but I think you'd want me to be happy. I'll try." Outside, a small bird skimmed past the window, its wings beating audibly in the silence. Serena smiled as tears rolled once more this time. Tears of release. That late afternoon, Serena and Gabriel strolled along the lakeside near her home. The breeze carried the cool scent of water, children ran freely across the grass, and in the distance the clear ring of bicycle bells chimed through the air. The sky was a pristine blue with a few white clouds drifting lazily like slow little boats. Serena wrapped a light scarf around her shoulders, walking slowly beside Gabriel. She had grown used to the quiet between them. There was no need to fill it with hurried words, his presence alone was enough. Each shared step felt like a gentle breath, easing the loneliness she once felt in the midst of bustling crowds. She told him about Cassian's strange habit. Whenever they had to make an important decision, they would always wait for a sign from a bird. Gabriel listened without interrupting, his gaze holding all the patience in the world, as if reserved only for her. Serena hesitated, worried that mentioning Cassian so often might hurt him. But when she caught the soft curve of his smile, that fear melted away. Just then, the sky above them suddenly stirred. A flock of birds appeared out of nowhere, sweeping past in the sharp formation of an arrow. The sound of their wings beat together in a low, rippling chorus. Serena lifted her eyes and tears welled instantly. "Cassian," she whispered, her voice trembling as though she were sending her words into the wind. Emotion surged through her. The sight brought back a rush of memories. The day Cassian had proposed under a sky filled with birds. The mornings they stood on their balcony waiting for sparrows to nest in the eaves. Every sign from the birds had been a thread, stitching her memories tightly together. Gabriel stood silently at her side. He didn't speak, didn't try to pull her away from the moment. Instead, he gently reached for her hand. His touch wasn't forceful or insistent. It was steady, a quiet affirmation. "I'm here. You're not alone." Serena turned to look at him. In Gabriel's eyes, she found no jealousy, no comparisons, only respect and understanding. Her heart trembled, not with guilt this time, but with gratitude. She realized then, signs didn't only belong to the past. They could also be little miracles in the present, guiding her towards something new, something warm. A tear slipped down, but Serena smiled through it. She squeezed Gabriel's hand, her heart suddenly lighter. "Maybe," she murmured, voice soft as the wind, "these birds aren't just carrying Cassian's messages. Maybe they're telling me it's all right to move forward." Gabriel gave a quiet nod, offering no more words. He knew this moment belonged to her, and his silence became the greatest gift of all. They continued along the lakeshore as the sky deepened into shades of violet. Serena felt each step grow steadier beneath her feet. She knew her love for Cassian would never vanish. But now that love no longer chained her down. It had become the wind at her back, carrying her into a new journey, one where Gabriel patiently walked beside her. In her heart, the past and the present no longer clashed. They stood together, like two melodies with different notes blending into a gentle harmony, and that flock of birds that had just swept across the sky was proof. Life went on, and love, though it changed, shape endured. That night, Serena returned home and switched on the TV out of habit. But this time, she turned the volume down so low that it became nothing more than a faint background hum. She sat by the window, gazing at the moon suspended high above, her hands still warm from Gabriel's touch. She whispered softly, as though speaking to both Cassian and Gabriel at once, "I believe in the signs, and I'll believe in the miracles they bring." Inside her, a smile blossomed, gentle, genuine, like a promise of brighter days to come. Thank you for being part of Soul Stories. If you're listening on another channel, come back to the official home so you can continue our love journeys together with the Soul Stories family. Late that afternoon, the publishing office had grown quiet. The rows of desks sat neatly in place, only a few desk lamps glowing softly in the stillness. Serena was gathering her papers when Gabriel walked in, holding a folder of sketches and a small envelope. There was something different in his eyes, calmer, yet deeper than ever before. "Serena," he said, his voice gentle but resolute, "there's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time." She looked up, her hands freezing on the stack of pages. Her heart thudded hard, sensing a new wind about to rise. Gabriel stepped closer and set the envelope down on the table. Inside was a pencil drawing, a woman sitting by a window, a small sparrow perched on the sill. The lines were simple, but the warmth within them was unmistakable. Serena recognized it instantly. It was her. Her fingers trembled as they touched the sketch. Gabriel drew a deep breath, then spoke. "I know your heart once belonged to Cassian, and I respect that. But Serena, I want you to know that I'm here not to replace him, but to help you write the next chapter. I want to build a future with you. Even if you carry pain, I'm willing to go slowly as long as we walk together." His words dropped into the silence, echoing in Serena's chest like the steady roll of drums. Tears welled in her eyes, a mixture of fear and wonder. The future, that word had long vanished from her vocabulary, but now hearing it from Gabriel's lips, it didn't feel so far away. Gabriel, she whispered, her voice breaking, I'm not sure I'm ready. Sometimes I still feel guilty, like smiling beside you means I'm betraying Cassian. Gabriel didn't rush to answer. He simply stepped closer, standing before her, his warm brown eyes steady on hers. He took her hand and placed it against his chest. His heartbeat was strong, steady, real. I'm not asking you to forget the past, he said softly. I'm only asking you to give the present a place to exist. Your heart is wide enough to hold both memory and new happiness. Serena, will you give me that chance? A swell of emotion rose within her, tightening her throat. Beneath her palm, she felt the rhythm of his heart, steady, patient, brimming with sincerity. That heartbeat felt like a lighthouse, guiding her out of the fog of loss. She drew a deep breath. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but a smile broke through as well. Slowly, Serena nodded. Yes, I will. I want to try. I want to move forward with you. Gabriel exhaled as if a great weight had lifted from his shoulders. He leaned down, and in that moment, the distance between them ceased to be a barrier. Their first kiss brushed against her lips, not fiery, not rushed, but warm and healing. It was a promise in itself. I'll be here. I'll be patient. We'll walk this path together. Serena closed her eyes and let her heart lead. In that kiss, she felt Cassian still smiling somewhere, in her memory, not jealous, not reproachful, but as though blessing her. That night when she returned to her apartment, Serena paused in the familiar living room. The golden lamp cast a soft glow across Cassian's wedding photo on the shelf. She stood there a long time, her heart heavy and yet calm. Serena reached for her necklace and unfastened the bird pendant she had worn every single day for the past 2 years. With trembling fingers, but steady eyes, she set it beside the photo. Cassian, she whispered, her voice as light as the breeze. Thank you for giving me such a beautiful love. I'll never forget. But now, I believe you would want me to be happy. Let me carry you in a warm corner of my heart as I move forward. She touched the frame gently, lingering there for a few quiet seconds. Her smile blurred with tears, but this time there was no bitterness. It was a smile of gratitude, of release. Then she turned away and walked into her bedroom. Her heart had opened a new door with Gabriel, with the present, with the future waiting just ahead. A year had passed. Morning light poured through the 7th-floor apartment, slipping through white curtains, washing over pots of lavender and bookshelves stacked to the brim. Serena opened the window and drew in a deep breath. This apartment had once been a prison for her grief, echoing only with the hum of the TV and her midnight tears. But now it had become a home filled with laughter, with Gabriel's unfinished sketches scattered about, with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and soft music playing each morning. Gabriel emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 cups of coffee. The sunlight caught his thick-rimmed glasses, making his gentle smile shine brighter. Here you go, just a touch of honey, the way you like it. Serena accepted the cup and took a sip. The sweetness spread across her tongue, warming her chest. She looked at Gabriel, then around the apartment. On the wall, Cassian's photograph still remained, placed beside the new paintings Gabriel had hung. It was no longer an isolated corner of the past, but a harmonized part of the present, a memory Serena treasured, though her heart now belonged wholly to Gabriel. Their wedding came on a soft autumn afternoon. It wasn't lavish or loud, just a warm ceremony in the garden of a small old church. Close friends, Serena's colleagues from the publishing house, and a few of Gabriel's relatives from afar gathered. Serena wore a simple white dress, not extravagant, but graceful as sunlight. Gabriel, in a deep blue suit, had eyes alight with pure happiness. They exchanged vows beneath white garlands. As the priest spoke his final blessing, a wooden window at the side of the chapel suddenly swung open with the breeze. A tiny sparrow perched on the frame, its beady black eyes peering inside. Its song rang out in the solemn silence, drawing surprised laughter from the guests. Serena froze, tears blurring her vision. She squeezed Gabriel's hand and whispered, Cassian is blessing us. Gabriel only smiled and nodded softly. He didn't question or explain. He understood. For Serena, birds would forever remain the language of love, and he respected that, as he always had. The kiss they shared after their vows wasn't just the union of two people. It was the harmony of past and present. In her heart, Serena felt Cassian smiling from some distant corner, while Gabriel held her hand firmly in the here and now. Nothing erased, nothing denied, only coexisting, allowing her heart to grow larger. That evening, back in their apartment, Serena sat at her small desk by the window. On the table lay crisp white pages, beside Gabriel's latest sketchbook. They had long planned to create a book together, not only about constellations or birds, but about love, memory, and continuity. Serena picked up her pen, her heart fluttering as it had the first time she touched a manuscript. She remembered everything: the nights when the TV filled her silence, the dream of meeting Cassian in the park, Gabriel's patient hand, the healing kiss in the quiet office, and the sparrow perched on the chapel window that very day. All of it converged into one gentle current that had carried her here. She smiled and wrote the first line on the page: "Love never dies. It only finds new skies to fly across." Gabriel came up behind her, resting his hand on her shoulder as he read the line silently. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her hair. Serena looked up, her eyes glistening in the golden lamplight. She knew this wasn't just the start of a new book, it was the beginning of a new chapter of life, a new sky she was ready to soar into with him. Outside the window, night draped itself over the city. A late flock of birds swept past, sketching a graceful arc across the violet sky. Serena watched them, whispering softly, "Thank you, Cassian. And thank you, Gabriel. I am happy." For the first time in years, her heart felt whole and at peace.